So, dear brothers and sisters, yesterday we were at the March for Life in Dublin, which was, as it usually is, a very positive celebration of life, and I think that's very important. What we do as pro-life believers or people who believe in this idea of being pro-life, it's not so much being anti-abortion; it's being pro-life. Anti-abortion is a kind of a negative understanding of it, because then it might lead to criticism of those who've had abortions, or kind of a judgmentality maybe towards those of a different belief. Whereas it's not so much that, right? It's not so much anti-abortion; it's more pro-life. It's the idea is that the fundamental idea here is that just every life is sacred. Every life is sacred. If it's black or white or wanted or unwanted, every life is sacred, and the circumstances, tragic as they may be, of the conception of that child, and as I said, they can be even violent, every life is still sacred. And as soon as we start to say some lives are worth more than others, I mean, surely this is the fundamental problem with so many of the things that we consider ourselves against these days, like slavery or racism or any of those kind of things. It's when this idea sets in that some lives are worth more than others. It's hugely problematic. Yet most, obviously, these days, hardly anybody is racist, because it's so politically incorrect. But what's the fundamental idea there? The fundamental idea is that all lives are equal. So you can't say because of a person's skin they're worth less or worth more. Okay, or because they're from a certain side of town they're worth less or worth more. Because they're a certain religion they're worth less or worth more. But yet in practice, that same fault, that same problem can start to show itself in other ways. That certain lives are worth more if they're conceived and they're wanted. If they're conceived and they're not wanted, then that life is worth less. It's the very same problem as racism. You know what I mean? Something which we are which all of society now is so against. Like any sort, you mention race and it's practically racist. You know what I mean? As in, you see a child. There'll be a child there. The child might, as children do, they just say what they think. You know what I mean? So they might just say, "Look at that black person." You can't say black; that's racist. But they're not saying that they're less or worse or. It's just, I don't even know what you're supposed to say. A person of colour, is that the term today, I think? I don't know what you're supposed to say. The person over there who's more tanned than I am. I don't know how you say it. I don't know. Because we're so terrified of being racist. All of society, it's like it's almost paralysing at times. You can't. Anyway, doesn't matter. You get the point. You can't refer to a person. It's very easy. There's a man, there's a woman, that person there, the person with the long hair, the person with the short hair, the person with no hair. You indicate a person by an evident feature. You're not saying, you're not casting a judgment on them. It's just, anyway, a statement of fact. But these days, even that is considered racist. That's how kind of sensitive we are to that. Okay, now I think we've gone a little too far, but the point is, we don't want to degrade people or be unfair towards people because of the colour of their skin, or because of, we're in absolute agreement with that. By the way, the Catholic Church was one of the first, if you will, organisations to be against slavery from the beginning. Even St. Patrick, back in the 5th century, was calling out against the slave trade between, what's now Ireland and England. The popes for centuries have been calling out against it. That's not to say now that there weren't Catholics who engaged in it, but the point is, the official position of the Church was against slavery from the beginning. Okay, so we won't get lost in detail. The point is that for us, every life is sacred. And that's like even the Black Lives Matter movement. Do Black Lives Matter? Of course they do. Do white lives matter? Of course they do. Do unborn lives matter? Of course they do. Why? Because of the same fundamental principle. Every life matters. Every life matters. So if a person is conceived and they were unexpected or unwanted, or maybe even due to rape, can I say that life is worth less? Can I say if that person grows up and goes on to have a family of their own, goes on to become an engineer and a teacher, who knows what, that their life is in some way worth less. Of course not. Of course not. So that's why it's enshrined in law that it was that every life is sacred, every life is equal. But now even that's getting, I won't so much even tested. That's outright contradicted by our law. So it's a strange situation to find ourselves in, to live in such a modern society, to live in a society with such technological advances. As Bishop Doran mentioned in his homily yesterday, humanity has obviously been creating babies since its conception. Did you get that? So since the very beginning, obviously, people have been having babies. Women have been having babies. I think it's fairly specific to women. Politically incorrect as that is to say, I don't care. Right? Women have babies, as far as I know. That's what I learned in school anyway. Yes, so they've been having babies for a long time. But we've actually known very little about the whole process for a long, long time. DNA was only discovered about 150 years ago. Apart from before that, we know the beginning part of it is fairly straightforward. But how the baby develops and all of that, and we didn't really have any idea. Whereas even now with our scientific advances and even there's still a lot we don't know. Science. I remember in doing a course on ethics. Science tries so hard to either replicate or control cell division. So when we're born, we have some cells that can become anything. So they can become brain tissue, bone tissue, liver tissue, toenail. They can become anything, right? They're, what's the official term? It's not omnipotent. It's not omnipotent. Pluripotent, I believe is the term. Yeah, so they can become anything. Then there are certain cells that can become lots of things, and there are some cells that can only become bone or skin or muscle or whatever it is. So science is trying to control these cells that can become anything, because if they can control a cell that can become anything, in theory you could grow a liver in a petri dish, or a heart, or a lung, or something. You could create an organ for organ transplanting and that sort of thing. The ethical issue with this is there's only, I think if I remember correctly, there's only one source of cells that can become anything. And that is an embryo in its very, very, very early stages. Then there are stem cells which can become many cells. So they can become a lot of things, not everything, but they're readily available in adults. We have them. They're in our spine. So from stem cells, if science can manage those, you could also, in theory, grow a lot of the various organs or cells that we might need. So science is trying to control that. So even that, we're still discovering things about the human body. It's absolutely fascinating. It's absolutely incredible stuff. But isn't it strange, though, that we've never known as much about the human body and human development as we do now? In the history of humanity, we have never known as much about the human body and its development as we do now. And there has never been as much abortion as there is now. The absolute contradiction of it all. We now know that little life in a mother's womb, scientifically, again, I haven't mentioned the Bible once yet, you may notice. I haven't lost my vocation. It's just these things are entirely reasonable. Science backs up what we believe. That little life in a mother's womb has a distinct DNA from that of its mother. So it is not its mother. That sounds completely obvious. But that's the my body, my choice argument just makes no sense, because we agree completely. Your body, your choice. Yeah, no problem. Put on makeup if you want, wear what you want, spike your hair, get your eyebrows tinted. Fine, your body, your choice. Absolutely no problem with that. But if it's your body, your choice, then it's also his body, his choice, her body, her choice. This body, their choice. And they're presently choosing to live. So again, just the logic, Your body, your choice. We have nothing against that. Absolutely not. But there's an individual, a separate person in there who's choosing to live. Now, I know it happens to be in you. The logic, and don't get me wrong, that there can be awful, awful circumstances and situations, but it's just an absolute fallacy as well to argue that abortion suddenly, magically, makes the situation disappear. I mean, I was talking to somebody yesterday whose friend had an abortion relatively recently. And she does believe in God. She's not particularly religious. She's discovering, I suppose, her faith in a way. But she's racked with guilt, but it has nothing to do with the big bad church condemning her. Within herself. She sees a mom walk down the street with a pram or holding a baby, and she knows. She knows what could have been, but what isn't. And again, that's no one's making her feel guilty because so few people know. But it's within herself. And again, be careful here. We're not condemning people. We're not saying people should be self-deprecating for the rest of their lives. But at the same time, this is very, very serious. So if we're honest about this issue, abortion presents itself as the quick and easy solution. Well, it's not for the child, and it's actually not for the mother either. It looks very tempting. It looks so tempting. Take this pill or go to the hospital and problem over. That's the way it's presented. It's presented as just this quick and easy solution. Voila, no problem. And on you get with your life. In reality, that's just not the way it is. It's just not true. Yesterday, one of the speakers said something. It was a line at the end of her speech, which was, I just thought, very powerful. She said, when all the dust settles on this whole argument, we won't find ourselves just on the right side of history. We'll have been leading history. So we're not just on the right side of history. I mean, like, a time will come in the future, when people will look back on the 21st century, maybe it's probably the 20th century as well, and say, my goodness, how barbaric. Do you know, we look back on the Dark Ages, or we look back on, the Crusades, we look back on different things, my goodness, what were they thinking? Like, what a shower of Egypts, Future generations will look back on us and say, my goodness, how could they have been so stupid? How could they have been so cruel? How could they have been so ill-informed? Or how could they have been so hoodwinked to believe that this was a good idea? We're not just on the right side of history. As pro-lifers, we're not just on the right side of history. We're actually leading history. Again, keep in mind that there were times when, in developed countries, slavery was considered a great idea. Because, you see, you get to produce your things very cheaply, because you don't have to pay the people who are producing them. It's great. So we make more money. It benefits the state. Benefits the individuals. What's the problem? Right? You know what I mean? Slavery looks like an absolutely fantastic idea. And there were a few voices consistently calling out, this isn't right. And they were booed, and they were kicked out, and they were ridiculed for standing for something which we consider so obvious now. Of course, racism is wrong. But back in the day, it wasn't always so clear. So we look back look back on history now and can't understand how people could have considered racism or slavery something positive. Future generations will look back on us in the same way. So we're not just on the right side of history, supporting life, defending life. We're actually leading history. Someone has to hold the line. Someone has to defend life until eventually, with the help of God, there will be a political sway, and we'll begin to realize the actual consequences and the actual hurt caused by abortion. Again, this isn't necessarily a religious argument on its own. It's just reality. It's just truth. The truth sets you free, says the Lord. This is just the truth. Speak to people. Talk to people who've had abortions. Ask them. I mean, we don't need to go into all the details, but for many early-term abortions, You go to your doctor, they give you a pill, and you have the abortion at home, which means when this traumatic experience is happening, so for a woman on her own in a bathroom passes her child, right? So all of the emotion and the physical pain and the cramps and the blood and all of that, and out comes the baby. And it doesn't bear thinking how traumatic that is. But this was the solution, right? Just one pill. It's all good. It's all over, right? Quick and easy. Talk to people who've been through it. There is nothing easy about it. And this should not be championed as a symbol of our freedom or a symbol of our modernity, our progressive thinking. This hurts the women involved, and it causes the death of a child. There is nothing good about this. In being pro-life, we're not just on the right side of history, we're leading history. When the dust settles on this whole argument, our consciences will be clear. We stood for life. And with the help of God, there'll be many little people in heaven who will have enjoyed a life down here on earth because of our stance, because of our vote, because we protected life. So we ask the good Lord today to continue to bless all of those who fight for life and who are ridiculed and who are belittled and who are called old-fashioned or religious bigots or whatever names are thrown at them. Because they know and we know that we're not just on the right side of history. We're leading history because we love. Amen.